So with the impending failure of Final Fantasy XVI on the horizon, I think it's about time we take a look back and look at one of the weirder narratives that surfaced building up to Final Fantasy XVI. Something that I think a lot of people have completely forgotten about. Something that was really weird, something that was out of place, something that I think, really needs to be talked about. And that was the allegation from Yoshida P, the director of Final Fantasy 16 and the guy behind Final Fantasy 14, is his opinion that JRPGs are racist. That's right. Yoshi P of Square Enix released a statement saying that around the 2009 period, where like the Western gaming journalism industry was starting to differentiate between like Japanese and Western RPGs, Square Enix developers felt the term JRPG was racist, and they were offended by again, this is like clearly like this was a clearly out of nowhere. This was out of nowhere, right? This isn't something we've heard before. This is something that they seem to have made up entirely, like trying to like coast by on like the Western love of like racially profiling developers based on where they're from. It seemed like they were trying to take a cue from like the Last of Us playbook, or like what black people typically do every weekend, like, oh, people only hate us because we're black. It has nothing to do with like what we do. Like the claim that like JRPGs, I won't deny that there was like a weird agenda against JRPGs at the time, and then in the mid 2000s, and that people were like the gaming industry was like favoring more towards like Western RPGs, but like a big reason for that was just because of like, the anti-Nintendo sentiment and just like, just the decline of JRPGs in general. Like it just, again, it wasn't entirely unwarranted, but like this whole coming out of nowhere, trying to say that like they were offended by the term JRPG, it really did feel like to me that this was an attempt at like an astroturfing campaign. This was an attempt at trying to get Western audiences to sympathize with Square Enix and the Final Fantasy brand. And I saw a lot of people like try and come out and say that like, oh man, like it was so hard being a JRPG fan back in the day and this and that. And, to a certain extent that is true, but like was it really offensive? Like, I, being someone who was a JRPG fan at the time, like, I grew to like kind of focus on this idea that like JRPGs were superior to Western RPGs, or more specifically that Japanese games in general were better than Western developed games. And of course, Japanese Nintendo hardware being superior than their Western counterparts, right? Like, that's something I've always been focusing on, something I've always been talking about, something I've always been proud of. And I think like these days, like being a JRPG fan is seen as a badge of honor among fans. These are the people who are like shit talking Square Enix for like westernizing their properties, trying to make like action-based or real-time combat instead of actually making good, real Japanese RPGs, turn-based RPGs like they used to, right? Right? These are the people who are like proud to be fans of JRPGs. And you're saying that the term JRPG is offensive? I don't like that. Like, I always thought that was like kind of a disgusting thing to say. And honestly, I think it was this specific instance that made me realize just how out of touch that like Yoshi P actually was. If he actually cared about Western fans, if he actually understood the situation here, if he actually understood just how beloved JRPGs are here, like it's in no way a racial term. It's no way like meant to be hateful or spiteful or anything. Like, if anything, JRPG fans are proud to be fans of Japanese RPGs. We love the Japanese. We love these developers. We think they're way better than these filthy Gaijin Westerners. Like, we love classic Square Enix, right? Like the downfall of Final Fantasy has nothing to do with like this agenda that like Western gamers are obsessed with like shitting on like the Japanese. Like, people stopped buying Final Fantasy because you stopped making Final Fantasy games. We haven't seen a real Final Fantasy game since 10, I would say. And, we have seen no attempts at like returning that formula. So, I think most Japanese RPG fans, they've moved on to Trails, they've moved on to Dragon Quest, they've moved on to Persona. There are so many better alternatives in this day and age. Like, why exactly would we care for Final Fantasy when there are so many other better JRPGs out there?